Welcome into the Scene Project Sports Network. I am your host, Bubba Startz, and with me today is the visionary force behind Savant Golf, Bill Bales. Bill, welcome to the show.
Hey, Bubba.
It's good to see you again. I feel like we've been spending a lot of time together these last few days, and I am all the better for it. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and to learn about Savant Golf, which is not quite launched out there yet as we speak today, but maybe by the time people are obviously consuming this, they'll be able to find out a lot more about you. And I'm just going to plug it right away off the top. Go to savantgolf.com, get involved in the community, find all the great stuff that we're going to be talking about here today. Before we get into all that, though, Bill, I really just want to give you the floor here for a few minutes and take as long as you like with such an awesome history that you have in not just the golf world, but in software development. Give us a little bit of your background, and then we'll pick up the conversation along the way.
Okay, well, first, I just have to say, I think your project is going to be huge. You're radically impressive in my mind. Anyway, so it's funny. I was in the investment banking business, private investment banking business in the late 80s. My brother was obsessed with software development from literally 1976 when he went to private school, and he was one of those kids that hung out in the mainframe room with the pizza and the Mountain Dew. And he was developing a golf game that was spun off of a game I gave him that we used to play a lot called Thinking Man's Golf. Anyway, so that moves forward. So I started reading the papers in the 80s about microcomputer software. And I went to my brother kind of the latter part of the 80s, and I said, I've been reading all about this software stuff and all the growth. I said, you do that. Why don't we do that? And he said, sure. And I said, well, I have one question. What is software? And it sort of went from there. We started a company called Friendly Software, and we made a number of consumer products, including a financial product with Charles J. Givens at the time was the most checked out financial book literally in U.S. libraries. And we developed a radical visual math skills game with a media company in Korea. We developed interfaces for other companies. We developed the first graphical interface for Turo's irrigation system, but we focused on our golf simulation game, which became, over the years, I'm pretty sure it's the most distributed computer golf game in all of its iterations in history. But it started out as Ultimate Challenge Golf, then it became Greg Norman Ultimate Challenge Golf, then Microsoft Golf, and then other forms after that. But I started About Golf in 2002, and we were lucky enough to connect with a company in South Africa called EDH, which is today known as FlightScope. And they were the originators of phased array radar for tracking golf balls and golf clubs. And so my team, which was pretty sizable and talented, and for a small dev company, co-developed. I mean, it was really Henry Johnson and FlightScope's IP, but our team worked over 2 years with them, in bringing that technology forward for indoor golf. And it became quite disruptive starting in 2003, January 2003, in that at the time, there really weren't any simulator products that had the accuracy to do club fitting, teaching, legitimate club testing, that sort of thing. Of course, that was really at the sort of the front end of the explosion of that sucking sound of off-course golf retailers pulling business from green grass, which is somewhat sad. But they didn't have ranges. Most of them, there were a few, but you go to the pro shop and there's a range out there. You can test clubs, take a lesson. So they needed, places to do that. And the About Golf simulators, when it came out, because its accuracy pretty much was the only game in town for teaching fitting and that sort of thing with the off course. We launched with, got a PGA Tour Superstore in the business, their co-founder who put together all their technology at the founding partner for Superstores, Eric Kobolinski. He now runs all of our business development as an example. But people started, other technologists started catching up. They saw it. And then of course, simulators started getting pretty popular in the 2000s. It's at least exponentially higher today. And we just kept plowing away. That radar that we developed with FlightScope later became TrackMan. And but I dug in, founded a vision company with a brilliant machine vision guy in Ann Arbor. It was sort of the epicenter, the cradle of machine vision, high-speed photography, whatever you want to call it. And in 2006, we started developing a vision system, which we launched January 2008 at the golf show. And it was another big disruptive leap in accuracy. Now, radar has, with a lot of inference and research, has come on quite a bit over time. And of course, now you see that TrackMan has implemented a camera for spin because radar basically is incapable of measuring spin axis. So they've implemented the camera, and kudos to them. They've done an amazing job. And, there's another company I have to call out as being brilliant. It's called Wintris Engineering. They've been the landmark developer of golf tracking technology all the way back to the very beginnings of Full Swing. Developed their initial system, and they're now owned by Foresight. And Foresight has done some amazing things with machine vision and golf ball and club tracking. And Wintris is, that's a great engineering team that they have there. But anyway, moving forward, our vision technology actually is now used in a number of other brands, and it actually is the best-selling premium indoor golf simulator technology in the world collectively among all the brands. It even outsells last 5 years GolfSon in Korea. So I'm proud of the fact that I fostered those kinds of things. We were the first to implement force plates. We developed a much more sort of intuitive and user-friendly for the pros video analysis system. We spent a fortune on screen research and had, really brought forth the first seamless and quiet screens and simulators. It used to be like bombs going off in a simulator, all that stuff. And I stepped out, got into baseball, believe it or not, with my second vision company. Is called Yakkertech. And it's not the best selling, but it's quite prevalent in baseball, and the most respected IP for measuring, for instance, pitch data. And actually MLB pitching at, when I started Yakkertech was as big of industry as golf simulators in the US. And then I ultimately 2021, I basically sold out of Yakkertech and started a company called Clarity, which is now morphed into Savant Golf. But I started research in 2021 with a researcher in the UK, working with actually literally a former employee of mine who had ascended to chief science officer for Huawei for imaging in Europe, and then the founding director of the Digital Environment Research Institute in London, member of the fellow of the Turing Institute, like 99.009%, achiever in the areas of vision and artificial intelligence, deep learning. And between the two of them, we filed a patent based on some radically groundbreaking technology that was brought forth by a company in Paris called Prophecy. It's called neuromorphic imaging. Now, neuromorphic refers to basically working like the brain and the human brain and the human eye, which is what Alan Turing initially started out to try to figure out in the 40s. CMOS computing, which is the, and vision, digital vision, that's the standard, and it doesn't work like a brain. But neuromorphic computing, also breakthroughs in 2021, also in France, and neuromorphic vision are changing a lot of things in the machine vision world. And we literally hit it from Prophecy's first research paper. Greg Slaybaugh, the director at DERI, had worked with Prophecy at Huawei. And so we ended up, we had one of the first alpha cameras, and we filed a patent January 2023, literally 18 months before Sony even started filing a bunch of patents, and Sony co-developed the technology with Prophecy. So we ended up getting actually published in USPTO, United States, a very broad patent that had the only office actions were to remove a superfluous "the." And we're now also approved and published in Canada, and we just were approved in EU. And it's going to change things, more than golf, but golf is where we're focused today. And what it promises is that it's going to just collapse the cost of body tracking, ball tracking, club tracking. You're not going to have to pay 20 grand for a launch monitor. You'll be able to download an app. That's basically bringing it forward.
Yeah, bringing golf and the ability to be your best version of the golfer that you want to be to everyone, not just to the pros, not just to the wealthy, but really bringing all of the tech and lowering the price point for everyone. That's what made it so intriguing for me to get a chance to talk to you, because a lot of what you bring to the table on the tech side is what we've been trying to bring with video content, bringing access to a guy like John Hughes, who is a master professional of instruction, that unless you're going to see him down in Orlando at the Omni Resort, you're not going to be able to learn so much of what he has to offer. And that's really where the Scene Project Sports Network as a whole, the Scratch Project in particular, our golf show and kind of vertical on that side, have been about. Yes, it's nice to cover the events and to go and have an opportunity to watch the pros do it, but how do we all get a little bit better? How do we become a little bit better? And then how do we build a community around that? And I think that's what really impressed me about the vision for Savant Golf, beyond just the amazing tech and the patents and all the tech stuff that, to be perfectly honest, Bill, a lot of it goes right over my kind of dim-witted head. But people and knowing what it means to a guy to win a club championship and how this tech is going to help guys do that and achieve those goals, that to me was what really attracted me to Savant Golf, and what makes me really excited about working together towards that future.
I have two areas of thought that came out of your lovely recap. And you alluded to it in what you're doing. This new world that they call AI is really about democratizing stuff for people that never had access to it in one way or the other. And it's a very broad dynamic. As an example, I perceive that there's at least two orders of magnitude of latent market for like launch monitors, simulators, body tracking technology, that relative to the current installed base. There's people that are going to want to spend $100,000 on their golf simulator, right? But you're seeing a proliferation of YouTube videos now about, how to make a really good simulator for a really low price. And one of the things we want to do is remove the cost of ball and club and body tracking. And really, the future of analytics in golf is software, not hardware. Other than this is such a magic thing. Okay. It's got compute. It's got cameras. It's got access to the web. It's got speakers. It can take movies. It can process. It's got all the FCC and CE and daunting Japanese electromagnetic, certifications. And it's in everybody's pocket, and it's in 10 billion drawers. Okay. So, why would you want to go out and buy a computer and a camera and a tracking device when all you got to do is download an app and use something that's in your pocket, and maybe even make it better by going and grabbing one that's in your drawer and pairing it up with it? You know what I'm saying? So, I've been a software guy all my life. I got into hardware, by necessity. And I always said, hardware and software, never the twain, will cross, but really it's the future of all this is, democratization and access, and, you hear about the age of abundance, either the world's going to come to an end or we're all going to be driving Rolls Royces. And, I'm hoping for the latter.
Me too. I wouldn't mind a Rolls to cruise around in.
Yeah. Why not? Why not? But there's the other topic. I lost track for a second. The other topic here is, how do people get better? Okay. And, the key to it really, at the end of the day, intrinsically, is following the science. Okay. And the world of golf doesn't entirely follow the science, and really never has. I mean, there's a lot of good science in golf, especially in club design, dimple design, that sort of thing. Okay. But most teaching pros, most practitioners are pretty intransigent about their a way of teaching. I watched a video the other day of a fellow that was getting really definitively into using some, a current product for body tracking. And he was pointing out that you see this guy, well, his spine angle is 1 degree off. We gotta fix that, right? Well, the problem is the margin of error in that system is like 5 degrees. So, I mean, it's, from a clinical perspective, it dies right with the measurement system. And yet, on the other hand, you don't have to get into 1 degree or, 0.1. It's like you're talking about, you go out to a instrumented range, it tells you hit it 87 feet in the air. It's like, what does 87 feet mean? It's like, we observe ball flight. Okay. You're not going to go out on a golf course and say, I want to hit this one 87 feet in the air because that tree is 85 feet high. You don't know how high you just know it because you've been there. Right. And so, I mean, there's a lot of silliness as well, but the point being that, dear friend and very close partner involved in Savant Golf is JJ Rivet. Jean-Jacques Rivet from France. He was the biomechanist for the European Tour. He's been in many team rooms in the Ryder Cup. He has former world number ones as students. I would think probably his most prominent student out there today is Justin Rose. But he's worked with countless top name pros and everybody else. He's got 3, basically equivalent of 3 advanced degrees from the University of Marseille and human and sports biomechanics. He's got 45 years of experience. I have all of his life's work on my server. It's like 200,000 vectors. And, but JJ's book is going to be coming out in the not too distant future. I'm encouraging to put the title on it. It's all biomechanics. And I know I'm going all long, but I'll just get you right to the punchline. Learning the swing is not about the club, the ball, or the ball flight. Okay. A launch monitor just films the crime scene. it's entirely biomechanics. Now, there's nothing wrong with that data, and it can be useful in a way, but at the core, it's entirely biomechanics, and every human is a snowflake. And so every human, their biomechanics analysis and what's optimal for them and their bodies and what they're willing to do with their bodies, not what they can do with their bodies, is the key to making the best swing. The measurement, ball flight, club ball interaction, 11.3 degrees launch angle, as if anybody cared. That's just validation at the end. Okay. That's like you made the cake and now let's taste it. All right. And the interesting thing about it is, and the science 100% validates this. We've done massive research with humans and with the best humans in the world focus on these very topics, as well as ever more brilliant AI to validate it. But a golf club fitting has nothing to do with launch data. It has nothing to do with plottings of your shots or ball flight. It's 100% biomechanics. The body is the engine. The club is the tool, and the ball. I have this sort of lame analogy to quantum mechanics, which, like the AI, when they puts on the pure quantum mechanics hat, cries foul, but, basically the brain, there's no brain in quantum mechanics, by the way. It just all happens, unless you believe in the quantum God. Okay. But, that's another discussion. So, but really it all starts with photons, whether it's thermal vibration or actual just photons colliding with electrons, and they disrupt. It's called decoherence. And then that disruption literally kicks out photons the other side. Okay. So the reality is that my analogy is that in golf, the body is that decoherence, the body is that electron, and the decoherence, which is the effect of that interaction between the photon and the electron. That's the swing, and the photon coming out, that's just the ball flying. It's an outcome. It's not a cause. And obviously you want to get fit to the right club. Okay. And you want to put the ball in the right place in your stance. That's more important than anybody other than JJ realizes. But at the end of the day, the body's the machine that makes it happen. And this is not done in club fitting. There's certainly people do biomechanics analysis, but you go all the big fancy club play, all they're doing is plotting shots and putting another club in your hand and trying, there's infinite permutations of ball head and club, and then the spec of the shaft, how many wraps on the grip, it's like it goes on forever, but it all starts with the body. The body will tell you everything. So this is, again, yes, that's a really long anal answer to your question. How do people get better? Starting point is to use ground truth science.
Yeah, the body is 101 if we're breaking it down like a college PhD, right? The club fitting and stuff may be down in your third or fourth year. There's so much that has to take place before that stuff even becomes relevant and actually makes you better, that if you don't fix the early and you don't set the foundation with the biomechanics, you're never going to truly improve. You may have better days, you may have better swings, but you're not going to incrementally improve as a golfer day over day.
Well, and obviously there's more to that. You just something as simple as course management, and once you have the right ball and the right club, and you've got your body working the way you want, and you get a good night's sleep, and then you have matters of what I call cognitive clutter. I'll come back to that in a second. But we talk about biomechanics, but biometrics are also critical. What Ben Hogan said, the most important 6 inches in golf is between your ears. but it's more than course management. And, it's more than controlling your thoughts. And here's a major punchline. And this is something that I've never heard talked about. I mean, in golf, you hear about a thing like flow. Okay, get in the flow. That Daniel Goleman was with his emotional intelligence, and that was sort of the beginning of all of that. But no question, you get in the flow where Bryson taught, used to put the EEG on, try to train himself to get into an alpha state, which sort of is endemic to flow. But the point is that the thing that's really the science is at the core of it is called preflex. Preflex has to do with moving as much of this clutter to the subconscious, because the subconscious, when trained properly, first of all, it never chokes, and it always makes the right decision, and it makes it instantly. The problem is nobody's ever figured out how to train the subconscious mind. And so this is another amazing partner of ours, Dr. Jonathan Page, he's a neuroscientist, but he's devoted his life to preflex, to training the human brain. He's worked with fighter pilots, with military people in dangerous situations, with law enforcement, like detecting a pipe bomb, or reacting to situations. There's like 14 things you have to multi-process like radically fast in a fighter jet. I worked very closely with Homeland Security, with whom I also worked for a number of years in their law enforcement driver training. There's over 90 federal law enforcement agencies, and they all drive. Most of them we don't know about, but they all go through training. And a brilliant guy named Mark Lachelle ran that program. He's also a partner. And, basically he worked off of existing science and, developed these training systems and simulators. We also make, in another age, we made driving simulators. And basically, you're a law enforcement officer. There's a live shooting somewhere, dispatch calls you. You have to tell them where you are. You have to keep track. You have to communicate with the other officers going to the scene. You have to navigate yourself rapidly through traffic, kids, schools, fog, semi trucks in your way, people on bicycles, on and on and on, and then when you get to the crime scene, you have to strategically plan and then sort out your tactics so somebody doesn't get hurt, so you don't get shot, so that you can take out the guy. It's a nightmare of multi-processing, but nobody can. So the more you can move that to the subconscious, and have the subconscious do that moves you toward what I call cognitive calm. And on a golf course, think about Ed Snead in the Masters, or Chokahoka in the 10th, in the playoff, in the Masters, the 18-inch putt, Doug Sanders, 18 inches putt to win the British Open. That's cognitive clutter. If they were to advance their preflex skills, they'd be major champions. And that's what John is working on for us, is to bring preflex to golf. I probably got off on a crazy tangent.
No, I love it. Well, and it's something that, and I'll shout out my friend John Hughes again, and his book of Instant Golf Improvement, a little shameless plug for him there, that he covers a lot of this. It is like so much of it isn't going to help you. A lot of what you're missing is there. And the reason he wrote his book was for the reason, as a trainer and as a golf professional, a master of instruction, right? That he sees this. He sees guys coming in all the time that they come in with a cluttered mind, and you expect to be better at this one thing that takes every bit of your brain and body power in every single moment for every shot to do. If you are thinking about anything else, you're never going to be successful in this game. And it's something that doesn't get talked about enough in this. And it's a reason why the guys that are at the top of their game, that are able to block out all of that, to block out all of the personal life and everything, to block out all the people that are there in the gallery and everyone watching and millions watching at home for, a Masters or an Open or whatever it may be, to make that putt. And, watching a guy, Ryan win the Open this year, where, what I say is like 8 seconds from stepping up to shot and see a shot, hit a shot. And I think there's so much that your regular guy can learn from that, exactly, of don't go up there and don't give the thoughts any space to invade in that, and just go out and hit. And I think that so much of what we're talking about and that you're really going in depth in is what Savant Golf is built on, and what Savant Golf is built to solve, and all of these things being available in one place, and not only being available, but also being a community for golfers. And I don't know if we have time. I would love for you, if you don't mind, to talk about the couch coach and what that can do for the Uncle Joes at home, to make it more enjoyable at home, to even watch and consume the game, much less playing it.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to hit on two quickies and then the couch coach. So a point to be made is that, we do a massive amount of research on the science of golf, but our MO is much more to make the tools for the people, again, that get up in the morning and shave and only think about their aspect of, golf science and learning and performance, and I have to make a really quick comment here, is that one of the benchmarks of our program, and one of our greatest areas of focus, is in bringing as much of golf back to green grass as possible. I'm talking about fitting, teaching, doing business, and to that end, any practitioner in green grass, or independent practitioner, even outside of the course, all of our tools for practitioners will be provided entirely for free forever. There will not be have to subscribe to anything. And that's number one. Basically, we want to empower the practitioners. All right, so I'll just jump to couch coach. That's a fun thing.
And I want to just get a quick aside in there before this. I want most people to understand that these practitioners that you're speaking about, for the most part, are independent contractors that may work at a course, a lot of them, not all, but that they are business owners themselves who are working on very slim margins to begin with. So anywhere that they can save a few dollars, even in subscription fees, make a massive deal to their bottom line at the end of the year, and allow them to maybe coach and to teach the game to more people. So really, your tech and the open sourcing of it is helping to grow the game of golf in ways that maybe have never been accessible to the masses, and really working through the practitioners to make that happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, our whole goal is to reverse that sucking sound, and bring golf back to green grass and the practitioners. There's some golf pros out there that make a fortune, but for everyone making a fortune, there's about 100 sleep in their cars, and they're not appreciated. They work extremely long hours, and it's but they do it because of the fact that golf is their life. I mean, these are guys that haven't watched a TV network besides the Golf Channel since they were 3 years old. So these are guys that deserve a lot of love. And again, in this age of democratization, why not? And I will touch on, you talked about the community in that. So part of our future plans, and it'll be rolling out quite soon, we call MyGolfSavant. And MyGolfSavant, basically, anybody that's a registered user of MyGolfSavant, we basically can track the rest of their life's golf journey dynamically. Everything they do with any of the technology, anything that gets analyzed, all the scores, if they want to record them, all the trips they take, whatever it is. And it's literally, you have your own, what we call narrow model, in GPT terms. Literally, you have your own AI model that follows your life. And we're developing right now recursive self-learning to not only sort of amalgamate all of these inputs and reason with them, but actually then self-learn from that. I mean, our whole gig is our icon is an orchid with roots. You know, the orchid represents orchestration, because that's AI sort of about orchestration, but the roots mean that we're building everything, with computational intelligence from the roots up. We're not putting a wrapper on an old product, so to speak. But so I mean, this idea that and for the practitioner, we're tracking the practitioner's journey. Individually, we're tracking the golfer's journey individually, and we're tracking the bespoke relationship between the individual practitioner and the student, so that literally the student can take a virtual version of their practitioner to the range or the course or their living room or their office or even on an airplane. And actually, we have one of our patents pending is called virtual practitioner. So it's all about empowering the practitioners and the players, to be able to control their own destiny and make their own decisions and get ground truth science and have everything fully coordinated.
It's simply incredible. I feel very fortunate to, one, have ever met you, and we have to shout out our mutual friend now, Dave Bisbee. Dave, obviously.
Oh yeah, he is golf's
with polymath.
Dave Bisbee, golf's polymath. Nobody knows everything about golf the way Dave knows everything about golf.
Well, and we're looking forward to a future episode with him as well. But it was very important, I think, to get the overarching view of Savant from you first, and something that really everyone is going to be able to use, regardless of whether you're trying to improve your game or not, is the couch coach. If you are someone who is consuming golf and you want to get a little bit of insight, and really it's built on all the tech that we talked about. It's built on the biomechanics and all of this, and putting it into this thing that you can point at your TV while you're watching it and be able to process all of that data right from the TV, and to bring that, I think that's incredibly powerful, and something that I at least wanted you to touch on before we go. So tell us about the couch coach.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It was just a crazy idea I had the week before the Masters, and I thought, well, what if I built a model, an AI model around the Masters, and, basically plugged in a lot of history about the Masters and about the players involved. I actually literally hacked into Masters.com live scoreboard. Shouldn't say that probably. And, put some what we call canon instructions in a really crude version of it, to, like, if somebody made a double bogey, somewhere, say, he's falling apart like a cheap suit, which is my late brother-in-law, and was like a father to my kids. That he was very colorful. He loved golf, and he was very colorful in talking about it. So I think about the guys with their hats on backwards watching the tournament, and the nachos and a couple beers and the conversation. So I thought, well, let's have an AI guy that knows everything about the players, everything about biomechanics, everything about the history, read every golf book on the planet. We haven't gotten that far yet. And if you want a biomechanical analysis about how a player hit a particular sand shot, or just analyze their face on, or look for signs that they're choking. This gets to preflex, waggle change, timing, pre-shot routine, hips, head, shoulders, that kind of thing. And the whole idea just got expanded and expanded and expanded. And this will be coming forth slowly, but the whole, we tap into the TV, pull the TV feed, go get an old phone out of your drawer, aim it at the screen, and all of a sudden you got another, kind of, if you want a smart aleck, with smart aleck commentary to join in. They know you, they get to know you. Or if you just want somebody, like JJ, you want a JJ to Rivet to analyze a guy's swing, or if you want, to comment on, a commentator's stupid comment about he put top spin on the ball, which you can't do, stuff, whatever it is, so that's the whole idea. And we'll be growing it over time.
So, Bill, when you were, inputting this data during the Masters, is it safe to say that your data and your model knew that Rory's tee shot on 18 was going into the pine straw before he hit it?
Probably not then, but absolutely yes in the future. Or at least, some degree of that. Really, it's like there's no limit with what you can do with the technology that's available today. So you just the thing about AI is, you don't just get a really good AI model and push the button. We call it HMC, human machine collaboration. It takes two to tango, and when you really want to do stuff. But that's why, as people more and more develop what I call these artisanal force augmentation chops. What that means is that the force is the technology, but you want to develop the human artisanal thinking and functionality around that the AI models will never develop. What you don't want to do is develop the stuff that AI is going to come out with next year or the year after. A guy named Richard Sutton, he referred to it as the bitter lesson. There's a lot of bitter lessons going on. I developed in 6 months, one person, something, a team of 10 developed, for $2 million in the past. So it's like, but that's the bitter lesson, right? We can get past the bitter lesson, but the idea is to design around the tools that are emerging and that exist. And by doing that, it's not just me. I mean, actually, we really, really want to recruit young, old, whatever, but new AI entrepreneurs that want to build, and change the golf industry, from the ground up, in this new world. And we're going to be really promoting for that. We'll make technology available. We'll basically run a virtual incubator. We'll teach. We'll give open source or license rights to IP. We'll help commercialize. We want to foster this, what will inevitably happen. I'm not picking on anybody, but it's like in all of industry, it's going to change so much. And there's going to be a lot of players that we never heard of before that are going to be dominating.
Yeah, I think there's an inevitability for what is coming. It's just nice to be with the team that sees that and is not afraid of it, but charges headlong into it and said, if it is going to be, then why not be the force driving that and being the artisanal human inside of that model rather than someone who's merely reacting to it 2 years down the line. Bill, I'm absolutely blessed to know you, to have met through Dave. I'm very grateful. You and your team are going to be, I think, a big part of my life moving forward over the next, hopefully, many, many years. And I get to be a witness in many ways to all of this growth that's happening and to take some small part in it as kind of the dummy in the room when you get together with such smart individuals as you have around you. But to be someone who can pull that human element out of it and to get that story is something that I truly look forward to. So, Bill, I'm very grateful to you. I want everyone to go and check out Savant Golf at savantgolf.com. That is SAVANT golf.com. There's going to be a lot of really great stuff coming from there. The website is up. A lot of the tech and things that we talked about today, by the time some of you are listening to this, will already be live, going out today, maybe not there, but you're going to get a taste of what's to come here very soon. And some really great content that we're going to be shooting around it as well. Not just interviews, but on the course and green grass content, we'll call it.
Yeah, that's great. It's going to be a lot of fun. And it really, at the end of the day, this is just about making stuff. And I look forward to anything that, we can help you with and work with you on. And it's been lovely chatting.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for letting me be a part of Savant Golf, and thank you for being part of the scene.
Thanks. I'll go to you. Thank you so much.